Certain fundamental ideals are repeated to students today at an ever-increasing rate. Give 100%. Be true to yourself. Follow the rules, and you'll likely live a successful life. These cliches are repeated over and over again to the point of becoming embedded in everyday vernacular, and sometimes to the point that these important life lessons begin to fall on deaf ears. This is when a new and more indirect approach of reiterating these messages is needed. Recently, a group of students at Edison High School were lucky enough to hear a retelling of these teachings by someone who can attribute his success in life to following these messages. Former NFL offensive tackle and Super Bowl 37 champion, Roman Oben. Mr. Oben visited EHS to talk with students about his life, growing up in Washington, D.C., after immigrating with his mother from Cameroon at an early age, and how his devotion to these ideals guided him through college, into the NFL, and still help him today with his work as a football TV analyst.
What I want to talk to you about is, it's called like the burden of expectations. And I think when we grow up in a society, I grew up in an area, in the 80s in DC, when you were told, an African American or Latino was more likely to go to jail than go to college, and sometimes all these negative stereotypes kind of permeate in your thought pattern, right? I mean, if it's like negative, like where do you get the positive from? I tell people all the time, I was born in Africa. I didn't speak English when I came to the States. Watching like Happy Days and Three's Company, like learning how to speak English when I was a kid. Like that's, getting ragged on by other kids. I mean, but it's a different situation, obviously for me, obviously. But I always try to impart wisdom into these kids that like everyone's different, and sometimes as you get older, you embrace your differences and you empower yourself. And that's what really makes you grow and thrive. Any of those difficulties, that's where you learn how to grow. That's where you learn your character. That's where everything's built. So expect it to be what? Difficult, right? Remember that, just remember difficult. I think at this age, it's really about your value system. And how do you value yourself? How do you value success? How do you value your goals? Value system at this age can be very fragile. And that's why I said, hey, it's okay to be a fan of Beyonce or Kim Kardashian or whoever, or an athlete, but they got to they're already at where they need to be. Like, don't look at the end of the movie. Read about someone's autobiography, read about Benjamin Franklin or whoever. I mean, read about, because throughout history, those things don't change. I mean, there's people starting companies right now. There's people in attics building the next computer systems. I mean, focus on the creative genius and things that we all have within us that'll make us unique individuals as we become adults. A lot of people now focus on the end result, focus on the end of the movie almost, and you miss the struggle. So when I grew up, there weren't a lot of expectations. It was like, all right, let's get out of this neighborhood so we can all be something one day. It was always like, don't get a girl pregnant, don't do drugs, but sometimes a lot of those don'ts are always understood, and I think true character is who we are when your principal's not there, your guidance counselor's not around. When it's you or your friend, a group of friends, when you have to make that decision at that particular time, and that's when you have to do what's best for you. I try to tell them to just really relish and appreciate the process that they're going through, because I talked about me taking a meteorology course because I thought I was gonna be a weatherman because it looked fun, and it was the most difficult course I ever took. And but I knew sometimes by failures that you can discover who you are too, by adversity. And I think a lot of kids now are just afraid to fail. Like parents want their kids to succeed, but they don't want them to fail. But we all failed. I mean, some of us continue to fail, and that's where we learn and grow. And it's not, as long as it's not a catastrophe, it's something we can always learn from. If you're not expected to succeed, if you're not expected to thrive and excel, then you won't. I tell my kids all the time, if you want to be average, then do average work. If you want to live in an average environment or be in an average, then you just do average work. Like, you guys know. I mean, if you're, like I said, if you're not being pushed at home and if you're not being expected to do well, that's a different animal altogether. But I think you should always try to strive to do your best. I mean, everyone's not gonna get all A's, right? Everyone's not gonna go to Harvard, as they say, or whatever, but go to college, graduate, become a productive member of society. Like, that should be the expectation. I say there's still value in saying, yes sir, no sir, looking people in the eye, shaking their hands, calling people following up, saying thank you, telling someone you appreciate their time, because everyone's time is valuable, not just yours. And I think the more this generation of kids understand that, the better we'll be as a whole, because I think eventually it goes back to that. I mean, you're starting to hear things like, okay, let's unplug for the evening. No electronics tonight, or no TV tonight. I mean, let's reconnect. I mean, people want relationships, and people want to grow and personally together with people, and not just be driven by whatever the current trends are, the current market. I mean, I always tell kids to make sure that you're doing the little things that it takes to enable you to empower yourself and empower your own future.